Lord, I don't know what my background doing, y'all. Hold on. Nope. And it's frozen. All right. Hello, everybody. It is 8 o'clock. We are about to do the daggone thing tonight. I am Melanie, and I will be hosting tonight. We will be talking to Peter Crosby, who is running for a U.S. House seat in Utah. So we're going to be having some conversations with him. Welcome in, everybody. If you have not followed the backup page that is right up under me, our vote counts too. Please do so right now. Make sure you're following that page. I don't know. I don't think I'm following on this page. I'm not. So I just followed that page. Again, if you have not followed that page, please do, so that you can stay connected in case we need to switch pages. Again, tonight we are talking to Peter Crosby, who is running for U.S. House Rep District 2 in Utah. So I don't know a whole lot about Utah. Did some research on it. It sounds like a beautiful state, actually. They have mountains, they have basins, they have plateaus, deserts. Like Utah got there's about everything going on in it. So we're going to learn a little bit more about Utah tonight from Mr. Crosby, and find out what his views are politically. So as soon as he comes in, I think he's here. Perfect. Peter, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Are you able to get on your camera?
Yeah, we're gonna try and
All right. Did you receive a background?
let's see what we can do here. It is only letting me do audio from my phone. I was trying to join from the live TikTok app on my
Let
computer.
me see. Yeah, are you on the computer?
Yeah, give me just a second while I transition.
Okay, no problem. While he's getting set, guys, y'all tap the screen, share out the live. Especially if you know someone from Utah, they may need to hear what Mr. Crosby has to say tonight. So again, if you're in, please share the live out, post it on your page. Let me do that right now myself. I'm gonna repost it and sharing it to my, so that everyone knows what's happening tonight, and we get some folks in here to share in our town hall. So as Mr. Crosby is getting ready, I want to remind you all of who our vote counts is. We are OVC. We are a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity, and ensure every voice is heard. Through education, outreach, accountability, and action, we are building a stronger democracy, one informed vote at a time. So make sure you join us because your vote is your power. Your vote is your power. So I appreciate you all being here. Again, tonight we are joined by Peter Crosby, and he is the, I believe, a Democratic candidate from Utah in the running for U.S. House of Reps, District 2. So, yep, we're going to be talking about his background, his vision for his district, and of course, we're going to be taking your questions live. So make sure you get those questions ready, and I would definitely present it to him. Welcome in again, everyone. All right, so he's gone. He should be coming right back on his phone. If you have not followed our vote counts too, please make sure you do that so that you have access to the backup page. And we may even be doing some things on that page. So make sure you are following our vote counts too. Hello again, everyone. I see all the hellos in the chat. I hope you all are doing well tonight. Let me tell y'all just a little bit about Mr. Peter Crosby. He is a longtime resident of northern Utah. He's a husband and a father of 3 daughters. So he in a house full of women. Before entering politics, he worked in the private sector for a Fortune 500 company, and rising quickly into supervisory and leadership roles while studying full time. Later, he transitioned to higher education. He worked for Utah State University. There you are. Hi.
There we go.
Yep, in institutional research, and became I always mess this up, adjunct.
Adjunct, that works just fine.
All right, adjunct instructor, teaching courses on American politics and emergent technology. Through these roles, he's built experience in both corporate and public service environments, which he says gives him a broad perspective on community needs and policy. So that's a little bit that I've learned about you, Mr. Peter. Again, I'm Melanie with our vote counts, and I will be moderating today. But since
It's a pleasure.
that's like I said, what I've learned. How about you let everyone else know a few more things about yourself and why you chose to run for U.S. Congress?
Yeah. I do live in a house full of women. I'm not sure if this got mentioned, but we also have 2 cats and a rabbit, and they're also girls. So I'm outnumbered on every front.
Yes, you are.
I think the biggest question that often comes up, like you said, is like, why? Why go ahead and run for Congress? I think the biggest motivation, honestly, is because I want to be someone who helps. I grew up in the era of PBS, and Mr. Rogers was definitely part of my childhood. And I remember he would tell a story that when he was afraid or scared, his mom would always tell him, go and look in those times of disaster or stress, and you'll find people who are helping. So go look for the helpers. And, we're 30, 35 years past that point in my childhood. And there comes a point, I think, where we start to look around and realize if someone's going to be the helper that our children are seeing, that has to be us. Somebody has to step up and do that in order to help everybody else in the community in times of trial. And that's what I want to do. I want to be a helper. So that's why I'm running for Congress here in Utah.
Absolutely. That's a great reason. Um, but you also have apparently, some um, experience in the political realm. So,
So I have undergraduate and graduate degrees in political science, which means I have a little bit, I think, of exposure to how the system works. I've been a state delegate before here in Utah, and so I have some background in kind of that political process. I actually used to teach American politics to freshmen and sophomores at the institution that I adjunct for, Utah State. And so I'm a first-time politician, right? Like a first-time candidate. I haven't run for federal office before. But as far as looking around the world and understanding that this isn't right and there should be something better, I think I have a decent grasp on that.
okay, great, great. Now, are you running as a Democrat or independent, Republican?
I'm running as a Democrat, which is
Okay.
super fun here in northern Utah.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, we're going to open up with a icebreaker. I couldn't decide between two, so I'm going to give you both, and you decide which one you would like to answer. So the first one is what incredibly common thing have you never done, or what food do you love most that others will find odd?
Uh, I guess we'll go with common thing, because I think like food's just awesome, so everybody should like all food. Um, I have never seen Titanic from start to finish. Not once in my life have I seen that movie from start to finish. I've seen parts of it here and there when it came on TV, but I have never seen the movie Titanic.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's good. That's good. All right, so we're gonna jump right on into our tough questions here. The first one that I will, the first topic we're gonna talk about is economic development. Now, families in Utah District 2 are struggling with higher food, housing, and utility costs, especially in fast-growing areas along the Wasatch Front. Um,
Wasatch. Yep.
Wasatch, okay. What steps would you take to lower everyday costs and provide real relief for working families in that district?
I think the very first thing that we need to do, Melanie, is roll back the illegal tariffs that the Trump regime has put into place. There's a pretty direct line correlation between tariffs on all of our trade partners, whether they're allies or friendly or not, and the fact that we now have grocery prices that have gone up 85% since the start of the year for a lot of families. And there's a really straightforward kind of resolution here, which is roll back the illegal tariffs. And that's actually something that our current congressional representative could help assist with and other members of Congress could do because the tariff power is a congressional power. And that's a really straightforward, I think, kind of, yeah, let's go ahead and just stop making sure everybody has to pay 85 or 150% premium on their day-to-day life. Let's go ahead and roll back the tariffs. That's a pretty straightforward way to improve, I think, what is starting to turn into a real affordability crisis here in northern Utah and across the country.
Absolutely, that could definitely help. Now, many small businesses in towns like Tuele, did I say that right?
It's
New
Tooele.
Tooele.
There's a running joke in Utah because a lot of our names come from Native American tribes.
Mm-hmm.
You can pretty much tell who's lived here for a while and who hasn't.
Right.
It's okay. I do the same
Uh,
thing with Pennsylvania towns. So
so y'all, Tooele is spelled Tooele.
yep.
Tooele. Okay. St. George and Cedar City say tariffs and increase supply costs make it hard for them to stay open. So I'm assuming those tariffs, reversing those tariffs would help the small businesses too. But what else can you do to keep the small businesses competitive and keep jobs in your community?
I think another step, so beyond that initial tariff relief, which is honestly pretty huge, is to look at our tax policy and determine how we can best make it work for everyday Americans, which includes our small business owners. Right now, American tax policy is focused on corporate interests, not small business owners and not everyday workers. I don't understand why we have an effective tax rate that means a small business owner pays more than a billionaire in real dollars in their taxes every year. That's a system that to me seems like we're focused on helping the wrong kinds of people at the expense of everyday Americans. And so I think that's another kind of straightforward policy step that we can take. We roll back these tariffs and we readjust our tax code so that everyday Americans, entrepreneurs, small business owners are able to afford the American dream, and billionaires are paying their fair share from what they have already extracted from our country.
Absolutely. That sounds wonderful. Rural parts of Utah, uh, District 2, lack diverse job opportunities, leading many young people to move away. So, what policies do you support to bring new industries, job training, and stable employment to rural communities so residents can build careers close to home?
I think the first thing that we should focus on is restoring rural internet access. So one of the things that we have seen taken away during this administration is subsidies for access to internet for rural communities, which is a huge killer when you look at employability. Whether we like it or not, the United States is part of a global economy, which includes a wide variety of work from home opportunities. And it's really hard for our rural workforce to take advantage of any of those work from home opportunities if they don't have stable, high-speed internet access. So let's make sure that that's a priority. I think other things that we can do there focus on education and training. We know that we have employment shortages and employment crises in a variety of professions. Nursing and healthcare professions, is kind of top of the list. So let's go ahead and reverse the Trump decision to reclassify nursing and other professional degrees as ineligible for tuition assistance, and let's go ahead and let's encourage people to enter into those workforce, especially I think rural healthcare. This might come up later, but the cutting of healthcare subsidies disproportionately impacts rural communities. Mm-hmm. And that effect is first felt in emergency care services, which means if you're in a rural town and there's an agriculture accident or a car accident or just a health crisis in general, your first line of defense there, emergency services, is now much less likely to reach you at all. We can solve that by making sure that more rural communities have clinics that are there, that are staffed, that have workers from the community. That helps solve a healthcare access problem, and it helps address an employment problem. Those are they're relatively, I think, straightforward sorts of solutions we can implement that have a direct impact on the people in these communities. And so those are some of the things I think that we could do immediately to help. Access to high-speed internet, access to infrastructure. Let's go ahead and make sure education opportunities are available. Let's reinvest in healthcare for these rural communities.
Absolutely. That sounds wonderful. Now, as we all know, Utah has a huge Mormon population. How important is the Mormon Church, the Mormon population to Utah success? How economic success?
That's a multifaceted question, and cut me off if I bloviate, right? So if I talk too much, you're like, dude, we got to talk about some other things. So Utah was founded by pioneers from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which are colloquially known as Mormons. And they're still the predominant religious population within the state. It's still a very active place from a church membership standpoint and from a cultural standpoint. From an economic perspective, the LDS Church is kind of a shorthand for it as well. Teaches that people should work hard, right? That you should be engaged, that you need to be active, that God blesses those who help themselves and their neighbors. And so a lot of that directly contributes to economic, I think, success in the state, because there's a really strong work ethic among people that live here. And there's also, I think, a really strong desire to be actively engaged in your community in some fashion. And I think, religion has some interesting concerns, especially as we have seen with this trend of evangelicalism supporting politicians that really don't exemplify the values that they teach. And I think one of the things to be mindful of is that Utah is actually less Trumpian than any other Republican state. So in the 2016 election, when Donald Trump won the first time, Donald Trump actually didn't win a majority in the state. He won a plurality. Utah was the only state where a third-party candidate actually had some degree of success. So Trump won the state. He had the most votes, but he didn't win the majority of the votes here. And then in the most recent election, 2024, Utah actually moved further left for Kamala Harris in vote totals than I think almost any other state in the United States. And so Utah, it's a unique culture, and that's definitely influenced by the presence of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that culture really doesn't like politicians that actively attack other people, that harm their communities, and that are not good representatives of what we would consider Northern Utah values, which is community and people first. So yeah, definitely it's had, I think the LDS Church has had a huge role in the economic success of the state, as well as the political culture of the state. Oh, Melanie, I can't hear you. I don't know if that's on my end or your end.
No, that was on mine. I didn't click my mute button, but I said I loved all your answers. So if anyone has any questions concerning economic development for Mr. Crosby, please request up or put your questions in the chat, and I will direct your questions to Peter here. Let's see. Can you please ask his stance on? Oh. Okay, we'll get to that in just a minute. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's see. All right, looks like I do have one question. Let me see. Maybe I can ask you that right now because I don't think it fits any of our topics. So the question was, what's your stance on Peace-Stein and It's Not Real? That's what I call it. Because TikTok don't like us to talk about those two places too much. So we kind of use some funny language to talk about it.
Yeah, can I just make a note on that? I think it is absolutely ridiculous that a social media platform that is used to help connect people and have conversations about serious things refuses to allow us to use adult language.
Correct.
To have adult conversations. So like, I respect the insanity of it, but directly to your question, my stance, I guess in what regard would be a better follow-up question. I know I can't necessarily ask that for clarification. I will say this. So everybody has a right to life, full stop. Like that's just, humans have a right to life. And Israel and Palestine, two nations in the Mideast that are often at conflict with each other for a variety of reasons, is a really good, unfortunate example, I think, of not respecting the right to life that exists within our communities. I believe that the people that live in those nations deserve free countries that are secure and that do not. I believe that the United States has an obligation to support the welfare of humans, generally speaking. And like I said, without knowing more context about specifics, that's my general perspective. I will say that Miss Rachel is awesome, right? Like if you need to use that as kind of a stand-in, anybody that supports children and the welfare of children and the health of children, regardless of what country they come from, that's somebody that we should be actively supporting. So Miss Rachel, she's awesome.
They did clarify. They said, do you think that we should still be funding the iCountry, or should we take away the funds from them?
Yeah, good question. Dwight Eisenhower, I like history. Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican president, one of the people who helped successfully free Europe from fascism, was president of the United States after a newly formed country came about in the Middle East. And his perspective on this was they are going to drag us into trouble. And he actually, his foreign policy at specific times rejected direct support for that country because of their militantism. I think that if America is using tax dollars to support initiatives, that those tax dollars should be prioritized to help American citizens and should be prioritized to help American interests. So that means that we can be involved in foreign affairs. I think we should be. I think international policy is a great way for the United States to establish opportunity for Americans and for others. But those policies should reflect American values and American priorities, not the priorities of a different country.
Absolutely. So I hope that answers your question, Petra. We're going to go into healthcare and women's health, which I'm sure is very important to him, as he has a house full of women. So we want to definitely talk about making sure these women stay healthy and can get the services they need. So if you have any questions concerning healthcare or women's health, please get them ready, because as I will be asking a few questions on it. So many rural communities in Utah's 2nd District have limited doctors, long wait times, and few specialty services. What steps will you take to expand healthcare access so families don't have to travel hours for basic or urgent care?
Yeah, and I kind of touched on this earlier, right? I think the very first thing that we do is look at the existing big, beautiful bill that made its way through Congress and say, actually, these healthcare subsidies are really important, especially for rural communities. We need those restored. Like you got to have funding. And then I think, we mentioned, let's look at employment opportunities specifically through the lens of healthcare access. We should be training more nurses. We should be training more physicians. We should be training more healthcare workers that are specifically tied to rural communities. One of the things that I strongly disagree with is the idea that healthcare should be for private profit. Healthcare is a basic human need, right? And our members of Congress who are currently serving have access to wonderful healthcare. There are public servants. That access should be the same for all of us, right? If they have it, then we should have it. And I strongly feel like the best thing that we can do for rural communities is to ensure that, one, they have healthcare resources locally in their communities that are accessible, and two, start to have the serious conversation about what does healthcare access really need to look like in the United States for all of our communities, not just what can we do to help a private corporation make as much money as possible off of the health and illness from other people.
100% agree. 100% agree. Well, additionally to making sure that just everyone in Utah or District 2 has proper healthcare management, how can you how can you expand women's healthcare so that they have more access to OGBYNs and prenatal care and preventive screening? And even the very sensitive subject that we that's big right now, which again, we have to use TikTok language, we call AB. So how can we can make sure women services are expanded when you get to Congress?
I think that we refund organizations like Planned Parenthood. I know Planned Parenthood is known socially for providing one specific type of service, right, when it comes to women's health care. But the reality is an organization like Planned Parenthood provides broad access to women's health care services, and their cuts in funding have significantly reduced access to a broad sweep of services that women need, generally speaking. I think another thing that we have to have a conversation about is very clear guidelines on access to a specific kind of women's health care. Because what we have seen in the state of Idaho, which is like 15 minutes north of where I live, I'm right on the northern border, they have a very restrictive policy in place regarding this one specific medical procedure. And as a direct result, OBGYNs and nurses who specifically focus on that kind of healthcare access, generally speaking, have fled the state. So now women who need access to just general medical services don't have access because their providers are worried that they're going to face legal consequences if something medically necessary arises during a normal treatment cycle. That's a problem. That's a pretty significant problem. I think we have all seen stories like the woman in Georgia who was in a coma and forced to give birth. We have all seen stories about women who have undergone illicit procedures because they were medically necessary and it ended up taking their life. We have all seen stories about women who needed a necessary medical procedure and they've bled out in a parking lot because a doctor won't treat them because they're not sure what the legislative line on legal is. All of these are problematic issues that can be addressed at the federal level if we have a Congress that is able to make that kind of policy. And so I think that kind of legal framework needs to exist at the federal level to provide support for women across the United States, so they're not dependent on a super restrictive state legislature.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. Now, Utah struggles with high anxiety, depression, suicide. Yet many areas in the district lack mental health resources. What actions will you take to increase mental health providers, crisis services, and community support programs?
Oh man. Yeah, this one, Utah has one of the highest, if not the highest, teen suicide rate in the country. And there's a couple of, I think, underlying factors associated with that, but one of them is definitely access to mental health resources. The best solution here is resources, right? It's resourcing. And again, this goes back to that conversation of, do we want healthcare to be controlled by private organizations in a for-profit environment, or do we want to look at healthcare as something that Americans just generally need access to? And I feel like if we can solve that problem, right, making healthcare generally accessible to Americans, then a lot of these other concerns, they may not be solved, but they'll be mitigated, right? We'll see improvement there. If we have a teen that is considering self-harm or taking their life, or even not a teen, anybody. I actually just had a really close friend earlier this year. He left his house on Sunday on a walk and he didn't come home. Like it's an epidemic, and part of the solution to that problem is making sure that people have access to resources. And the only way that we can do that is making sure that those programs are accurate, are resourced adequately. And the best way to do that is to remove private profit from healthcare. It really is.
Making sure the funding is there also.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's all the questions I have on healthcare. Does anyone else have one? I do believe, well, I thought we do have someone in the queue that wants to come up and address you with a question. This is Miss
Hi,
Ashley
everyone.
Banks, who visits us often. So welcome, Miss Ashley.
Thank you. So yes, and I always say this because I have the opportunity to see different candidates, and I'm going to first say congratulations, Mr. Crosby, for your your bids for state rep. And also, but I do have a question. In Illinois, and I know this is not Utah, so I'm just saying Illinois because I need to know, I don't know about Utah. In Illinois, there is an age 12 that a mental health, a child, I believe, can have conversations with the doctor without the parent involved. Now, is that the same in Utah?
I don't know the age for that. I would have to check on that, Miss Banks.
Oh,
I don't know the age.
and do you agree that children should, at that early age, if that be the case, do you think that doctors should be having private conversations with them? Isn't that something? Oh, it's 12, and okay, got you. Isn't that something that is concerning in the hospitals? Do you agree or no?
So I'm gonna reframe this a little bit, and you can tell me if I'm accurately understanding what you're asking here. I believe that people, children, adults, regardless, need access to health care. And when a vulnerable population, children are vulnerable more than almost any other population, require access to health care. In some situations, I believe it's medically necessary for them to have a private conversation with a healthcare provider. Now, is that appropriate? Is that inappropriate? I think that most hospitals would agree that they have policies in place to ensure that a vulnerable population is protected in that environment, which would mean 2 witnesses from healthcare staff, right? So a physician and a nurse, or a physician and attendee. And that's necessary because children often find themselves the victims of abuse in a variety of circumstances. And if the child is not allowed to have a private or candid conversation with healthcare providers, then there's less likely that they're going to be able to report if abuse is taking place. And unfortunately, if you've looked into social work statistics or any kind of child abuse statistics, most child abuse happens from someone that the child directly knows, oftentimes a direct family member. And so if you're going to be able to catch, identify, and help those children get access to resources and honestly protect them as society should, then yes, I absolutely think it's appropriate for children to have access to a healthcare professional in an environment where the healthcare professional is protected. So that's 2 people in the room, and the child is able to have a conversation that might be medically and honestly necessary from a societal standpoint.
Is that not the job of DCFS?
I don't know how familiar everybody on this event is with DCFS. Oftentimes DCFS is notified by an interested party, right? So how does DCFS become aware that there's abuse in an environment? That's because a healthcare provider or a trusted adult has notified them. If the child has no one that they can talk to because they're in an environment that's not safe, and they go to a physician for an annual checkup or for shots for 7th grade or something, right? And the physician or the attending notices that there are likely indications of abuse, how else would we identify that, right? What other opportunities does that child, that vulnerable population, have to make themselves heard? And so I think those are things that we should be cognizant of. And I do want to be very clear. I am a strong proponent of parental rights, right? I have 3 kids. I believe that parents are responsible ultimately for their children. And that's an important concept. What we're talking about here are hopefully edge cases or fringe cases that are not like an everyday occurrence. But in the event of something like this happening, I think it's appropriate for society to create an avenue for our most vulnerable to be able to have a voice and to be heard when they need help and support.
Did you know that a 13 or 12-year-old can call DCFS themselves?
I did not know that. I mean, I have 12 and 13-year-olds. I'm sure they can contact. I would just say, why would we close any avenue for a child to get help when they need it? Like, from my perspective, why would that be something that we would want to close off for them? That's just, I'm more concerned about protecting the vulnerable population. And if there are opportunities to do that, let's do that.
Yes. Well, thank you for coming up, Miss Ashley. I appreciate your questions.
Melanie, I have one more question, then I'm out of your way. Not
Okay.
about this. The last question that I have is in reference to why are taxpayers or people who work, they have money taken out of their taxes to go towards their plans at their jobs, but they're also paying state insurance towards the Medicaid and the medical. Why not universal care so they don't have to pay double?
I think it's a great question. And I mean, the why of it is because we have policy in place that favors private insurance companies. I don't think that's a great plan long-term for the health of our communities. We have insurance plans that we know work for broad community access like Medicaid and Medicare. We should have a conversation about expanding those.
Okay, I'm done. Y'all can kick me out
All right.
now.
Thank you, Miss Ashley. So, Peter, to your point, I've actually made this comment earlier that when I look at a situation, I don't look at the singleness of it all. I look at the whole because, like you said, we can also look at that situation that parents may feel shut out, but we also have to look at the situation, like you just said, that maybe there's a 15-year-old that is being abused and needs to speak to the doctor alone. So I know, every law policy is not going to be good for everybody, but it should be a good overall, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do, we like to do a thing we call rapid fire, right? And
Okay.
it's some questions, quick yes or no answers or short answers to these questions. The first set I'm going to do right now is going to be more political. And then the second set is going to be more fun. So first set, term limits, yes or no?
Yes.
Filibuster, keep or eliminate?
Ooh, this one's hard. Right now I lean keep because eliminating it usually is going to cause long-term problems, right? It's supposed to be a check. So right now I say keep it, but that might change.
I already kind of know your answer to this question, but I had it down. Healthcare, government-led or private-led?
I think government-led is a better solution.
All right. Climate change, is it a top priority or not so urgent?
I don't know. I got kids. I'd like them to be able to have grandkids and, to breathe. So I'm going to go ahead and call that one urgent.
Okay. Who gives better advice, your teen or your mom?
It depends on what it's about. And I don't like that question, Melanie. That's a sucker question. I would say my mom's got a wealth of life experience. And so she's able to go ahead and provide some guidance. And honestly, mostly she just laughs now when I say, I'm like, was raising me like as fun and interesting as it's raising my kids. And I do want to say, did you say wife or teens? Because I heard teens.
Team. Your team, your political team. Do you have a political team?
My political team? Okay. I'm going to go with it depends.
Okay. All right. Now, would you rather do fundraising events or town halls?
Town halls every day of the week.
Yes. Good answer. Now, last question. Your opponent just said that they represent the people. What's your response?
Blake Moore doesn't represent Northern Utah. It's pretty clear in his policies that he doesn't. He represents Republican Party leadership. The only way to know how he votes is what Donald Trump and Mike Johnson have told him to vote for the last year, and his policy making favors corporations. If he wants to say that he represents the people, I would ask which people, because it's not the people here in Northern Utah. It's not our communities. It's certainly a different subset.
All right. Sounds like a good comeback to me. So we're going to go into our next topic, which we kind of touched on it just a little bit because it's talking about the youth of our nation. But we're going to talk about the youth of Utah and public education in schools. Now, schools across Utah's second district struggle to keep teachers because wages aren't keeping up with the cost of living, especially in growing areas like St. George and give me one, Tooele? Tooele. Okay, in Tooele. Yep. What solutions would you support to help districts retain teachers and ensure classrooms have the support they need?
I will note just before diving into this, so District 2 is now Northern Utah because Utah just had its maps redrawn. And St. George and Tooele are the old District 2, and they're more in the south of the state. So we actually have a different kind of set of concerns. But teachers and access to teachers and education, I think, is an important, just in general, concern. The biggest thing, and it always comes back to this, is resourcing, right? So how do we as Americans want to spend our money, because we do pay taxes, and which Americans are paying taxes? At the end of the day, when we look at wealth disparity in the country, the top 1% and even the top 0.1%, we can expand this out to the top 10% if we really need to, control more assets now than they ever have, I think, in the entire history of the United States. And yet they pay fewer taxes, actual tax dollars, than any other subset of Americans. I think that we need to make sure that teachers and firefighters and police officers, public servants, electricians, all of our common everyday sort of Americans have access to the resources they need. And that comes if we have a good conversation about, well, who's paying taxes, how much are they paying, and how are we using that money? One of the real benefits, I think, of Northern Utah is that we actually have a couple of institutions of higher education. So we have two universities up here. One is Utah State University, the other is Weber State University. And there are some really, really good teaching programs here in the state. USU's teaching program was, I think, at one point nationally recognized as one of the top. We know how to train teachers, and we have a community and a culture that appreciates education and that respects the role of educators and the role that they play in our communities. If we aren't paying them enough, that's a tax allocation problem. And that's actually a local concern. So the Utah legislature is a supermajority Republican, and we have a very large surplus that the legislature currently is not spending for a variety of reasons. And the legislature doesn't actually like to fund public employees like teachers the way that they need to be funded. And so I think that this is one of the things that we look at a local policy. The local Utah legislature needs to fund teachers better. They need to stop being hostile to teachers' unions, and they need to provide the resources necessary to help our kids be successful in their educational environments.
Absolutely. Now, many students want paths to good jobs without necessarily attending a 4-year college. What steps would you take to expand vocational training, apprenticeships, and tech educational programs so that students in Utah's second district can build careers close to home?
I actually think the Biden administration had a really solid plan here to build out infrastructure through educational opportunities, make trade school and junior college part of the K through 12 system, right? So they're publicly funded. You don't need a 4-year bachelor's degree to find economic success. You can go and get skills and training in a variety of other ways that help you find a good job. I am a proponent of that, right? Let's expand access to this education and developmental opportunities. So when students are leaving their childhood education environment, they are ready to step out into the workforce in a meaningful way. And this goes back to, I think, part of that question we had about economic development, right? Those kinds of educational opportunities are really best developed in an economy that isn't being hamstrung because we have tariffs on everything in the world and nobody can afford to buy groceries and nobody can afford to buy a house. Like, we really need to focus on creating a healthy economic environment and then providing opportunities for people to succeed in that economic environment. That's what success looks like, right? And creating access to junior colleges and to trade schools as part of just our K-14 environment, that would, I think, do a lot to help students feel like they're prepared to enter into the workforce and have a job that can start helping them grow and develop a life.
This next question comes from the audience. It's not dealing with schools per se, but it could go into it. They want to know, would you be willing to ban the the right to work laws, as well as strengthen the unions of workers?
Yeah, 100% support strengthening worker unions. I feel like that's an important way to develop a healthy economy. I'm going to go ahead and reference Eisenhower again. Again, Republican president, war hero, noted individual who was, if you want a Republican stalwart in the 20th century, Eisenhower's a pretty good example of that. His solution was to strengthen trade unions. That's what he saw as the basis of strong economic output, was strong trade unions. And I think that is absolutely something that we should focus on.
Absolutely. When you go to Congress, you going there to represent your district. Let's see. All right, let me see. Uh, Kennedy, how are you doing?
Doing great. Can you hear me?
Yes. Did he answer your question, or would you like to elaborate?
I mean, I have another question. I think Peter answered that perfectly. I also know
Okay.
Peter. I'm in his district, so
Oh, great.
wanted to ask another question. So how are you also going to help? Because climate change is a pretty important issue. How are you going to address like building up the green jobs like solar, wind, and all that for Utah to make sure we don't have to rely on fossil fuels anymore?
Now, Kennedy, you're getting ahead of me, baby. I was going to get to
I'm
environment and
so sorry.
infrastructure, but
Oh,
that's
I'm so
okay. Go
sorry.
ahead and answer that question, Pete.
All right, we'll dive in. The Biden Infrastructure Act directly addressed that. And then the big, beautiful bill that was just passed by Congress, which was co-written by our representative here in northern Utah, Blake Moore, went ahead and undercut all of those green energy developmental initiatives, which is devastating on both an environmental front and on an economic front, because northern Utah had a really robust solar economy, so a lot of solar installers and solar development. The United States is already behind. If you talk to anybody that has visited China recently, if you've seen any news that comes out of there, China is well ahead of the United States in developing green energy infrastructure. They've put a lot of money into it for good reason. And we were headed down a path that would have let us be competitive in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And then we stopped because our current representative and the Trumplican administration decided that oil dollars and fossil fuel dollars was more important than developing an economy that worked for Americans, both in making us healthier and in giving us access to more jobs in the future. Bring back that policy, right? Like, we know what that policy looks like. Let's bring that kind of policy back, because that provides jobs to Americans and gives us a better environmental outcome.
Absolutely. Kennedy?
Thank you so much, Peter.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for coming up, Kennedy. Yeah, I was going to say that, when you get to Congress, like I said, you go there to represent your district. You go there to try to bring some sort of resources and change to your district. But it really do depends on how well you negotiate or, compromise with your other colleagues. And so with that in mind, what is going to be your strategy once you get there to get the policies and the bills that you put forth passed, or like I said, conversing with the other side to on things that they want to do?
Yeah. So one, I think as a Democrat from northern Utah, I win the election, right? And I'm seated in the House, and I am now the representative for northern Utah. Yay, we did it. The very first thing I think to take note of is the uniqueness of that kind of role. So Utah currently has 4 Republican representatives. We've redistricted in the state, which has actually helped secure 1 Democratic leaning district, which is in the center of the state. And then my district has an opportunity to go blue if we can get the resources that we need to run an effective campaign. Like, we know what success looks like. We just need the resources. So I'm in Congress now. I'm a Democrat from northern Utah, which gives me a lot of leeway in working across the aisle. Because from a Democratic Party perspective, it's very valuable to have a Democratic representative in northern Utah, which means when it comes to party line votes, I have a lot more flexibility to say this just doesn't work for my district, right? So you can force a party line vote. That's fine. I understand that you're going to do that at the national level, but I'm going to vote for my district because that's my responsibility. And they're much more likely to say, yeah, we understand that because you're valuable to have there in northern Utah. It also means that working across the aisle, right, in bipartisan or nonpartisan fashion is a lot easier, because culturally, I think that if we look at moderate Republicans, I'll be very clear about this, is moderate Republicans, not people that have become MAGA or Trumplicans, but lawmakers that are interested in practical, pragmatic solutions, everybody has a seat at the table for those conversations, right? So as long as I'm coming to that conversation, I'm a good faith negotiator. I'm willing to say, hey, let's reach a compromise here. And a good compromise makes everybody angry, right? So nobody gets everything they want. But if this is what we need to do to help my district and our country, then this is the conversation that I'm willing to take place in. And again, I'd be in a pretty unique position to do that kind of work. And I think that actually gives Northern Utah a lot of leverage to have the district receive the kind of focus that it needs to be successful, both economically and in other ways. So yeah, I'm always happy to have a conversation, regardless of political affiliation, as long as that conversation is focused on a practical solution.
Sounds like a good strategy. Now, so my topic on this was local issues and constituent focus. Okay, that was the topic. Now, as you said, you have to get there first. And currently there are 4 Republicans representing Utah. How do you convince these very conservative residents, communities, people of Utah that you not like the Democrats that they're being sold?
I think the very first thing is something like this, right? So let's have a conversation. And I've been doing local meet and greets and local town halls for the last month and a half, where this kind of conversation is exactly what we're doing. So you come, you talk, and let's have a conversation about what you and your community need. So I think that's a huge part of it. Another big part of it is, honestly, there's a lot of propaganda across the political spectrum right now. And sometimes it can be hard to see through that propaganda to what's actually happening. One of the direct consequences of the fact that the Trump administration has imposed tariffs, and they have passed the big, beautiful bill, and they have cut healthcare subsidies, and they have created economic hardship for millions of Americans, including here in Northern Utah, is that your daily experience is the best way to cut through propaganda. You can go watch whatever news you're going to watch, and they can tell you whatever they're going to tell you. But when you go to your grocery store and you can't afford to buy milk and bread and chicken, or you go to look at a house and realize because you rent, you'll never be able to own a home, or your hours at work have gotten reduced, or you don't have a job anymore because of the economic downturn, that cuts through propaganda really quick. And people here in Northern Utah see that, and they understand that, and they recognize that the person responsible for our current policies is the person that we voted into office last round, because we have watched him do this over the last year. Blake Moore has sat on the Ways and Means Committee. He has helped write the legislation that has cut rural health care access. He has stayed silent largely as these illegal tariffs have made it harder for us to buy groceries, to have access to good jobs. He has been silent as our communities have suffered directly, and he hasn't done anything to help us. That cuts through any kind of propaganda pretty quick. And so that's, I think, the second major piece of this is people see right now that it's different. They're not better off today than they were a year ago, and they can't trust their current representative to help them. And they see that, well, there is somebody that's willing to help, right? To go out and be a person that puts the community first. That's the starting point to have these conversations. That's the path that leads us to having somebody in Congress that can better represent Northern Utah than the person we have in Congress right now.
Absolutely. Continue to remind them that the reason you're facing some of these issues is because the guy you currently have in there is not fighting for your success, your access, your resources, whatever, right? Okay, so my last question about a constituency focus is, as you were just saying, you've already done a lot of town halls or outreach to the people who are responsible for voting for you. Once you have been elected, how will you stay accessible and ensure that every part of this large district has a voice, and their concerns are addressed?
Some of that is just practical logistics, right? Making sure you have a staff, making sure that you have field offices that people have access to. A big part is responding to emails, which the More campaign is not really well known for being super responsive. Because constituents have questions, they have concerns. That's my job, right? Like, you're who I work for. I have two priorities, the Constitution and my district. Everything else is below that. And so my job is to make sure that you are heard and that you're taken care of. So back in DC, it's a reliance on my field offices and staff to make sure that those questions are being answered and that they're being funneled appropriately. And then when I'm not in DC, my job is to be in my district, right? Like, that's my responsibility, is to travel from rural town to Ogden, to Logan, to Brigham City, to Clearfield, to spend time in each of our communities to make sure that people have direct access to me. That's what I'm signing up for, is to make sure that I am there to be your public servant. And I think that is definitely a point of frustration with our current representation, is I don't know that we always feel like we have somebody who wants to spend time to listen to us. I think part of that is because he accepts corporate PAC money. I think he's gotten over $600,000 just this year in corporate PAC funding. He has like $2 million that he's sitting on, which is $2 million or 2 million reasons for him not to listen to us, because he doesn't feel like he needs to. And so I think a big concern that we need to focus on is, if you're the representative, you're here to represent the people of your district, not corporate interests. And if you're not in DC, that's what you're doing. You're spending time in your communities, making sure that their concerns are being heard.
Yeah. Someone said Blake Moore doesn't even live in the district he represents. Is that true?
Oh, sorry. I got an incoming phone call. I had to reject him.
That's okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you chose me. So Blake Moore is the current rep, correct? Yeah, someone said he doesn't even live in the district he represents. Do you know if that's true?
That is true.
Wow, that's crazy. Yes. So there we've talked to a lot of candidates, and most of them are on board with getting money out of politics. Would you also agree with that stance?
Very much so. I actually think that publicly funded elections, at least at the federal level, would do a considerable amount of good towards eliminating or reducing the problems that we see currently in our political system.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mr. Peter, it's time for rapid fire round 2.
Okay, let's do
and this
it.
is going to be just a little more fun. I did a little bit of Utah research, so this should be fun.
Oh, no.
Best national monument or park: Cedar Breaks or Rainbow Bridge?
National monument or park? I'm going to go with neither and say it's Zion's National Park.
Zion's.
Mhm.
Okay. I didn't see that on my list, but okay. Best feature of Colorado: the Rocky Mountains or the Great Salt Lake? Not Colorado, of Utah. I'm sorry.
Utah. I'm a mountain guy. I spent my summer in the mountains. Great Salt Lake is great and all, but it's a stinky shrimp pond. It's a really big, stinky shrimp pond that we've got an environmental crisis over. I'd spend my days in the mountains any day of the week.
Absolutely. This is where that came up. Best neighbor: Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, Nevada, or Arizona?
These questions seem like they're all about trying to pick fights. All right.
Luckily, they don't have to vote for you. So
Right. They don't have to vote. We're going to go with Wyoming, but it's important to say why. So Wyoming is home to Yellowstone, as well as Grand Tetons National Park, and they're both absolutely gorgeous. But Idaho has some of that too. The other reason is that for a long time, fireworks were illegal in Utah, and so when I was a kid, if you wanted to blow something up, you had to drive to Wyoming to get access to it.
I know that's right. That makes a great neighbor. You're absolutely right. Now, here's another. It is all about picking fights. The Uties, for University of Utah or Brigham Young
Neither. I'm
Cougars?
an Aggie. I'm
I
a
look. I
USU
said.
boy.
As a matter of fact, I said, "Oh, he's not gonna like that question." He says he's Utah State. What?
Yeah, no, I'm an Aggie, man, all the way.
I know that's right. Funeral potatoes or Utah scones?
Oh, have you ever had funeral potatoes?
No.
All right, so picture like just as much cheese and as much potato and as much like cream or some kind of creamy base in there that you can imagine. And traditionally they're served with cornflakes on top. I don't understand that particular appeal, but like that's funeral potatoes. And like if you need comfort food, that's really solid comfort food.
Well, we call
Although,
them scallop potatoes here in
yeah.
DC.
So we actually, well, you guys, you scallop them. Oftentimes we'll use frozen hash browns, right?
Oh.
So they're hash browned. I like a good scone, but I'll go with funeral potatoes. They are delicious.
Okay. All right. Green River melons. Green River melons or Bear Lake raspberries.
Bear Lake raspberries.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, ice cream shake or green Jello?
Ice cream shake every day of the week. All right. I don't know how much time we have for this, but I'm going to steal 1 minute to tell a story because I find it hilarious.
Absolutely.
So my family's not originally from Utah. I come from a military background, so we moved all over the place. But we settled here when I was probably like 10 or 11 years old. So I've been in the state longer than I haven't been in the state for sure. My brother, I have two older brothers. My oldest brother started dating some girls, and he really liked a girl, and he went to her house for dinner. And when he showed up, there was just this green Jello on the table, and he's like, I guess that's dessert, because that's our reference, like Jello is dessert. And it had like a coating of white on top. They sat down, the girl was really proud she had made it, and they sliced into it, and he realized it wasn't dessert, it was dinner. And what he thought was fruit in there was actually carrots and chicken and peas, and the top of it had been coated, I think he said, in mayonnaise. And
no!
Like,
Stop!
And I could not think of a more stereotypical Jello experience to like have him experience. So he came home and he told that story, and it's just like it is now part of who we are as a family. Like this is our relationship to Jello. So I still like orange Jello is great or whatever, and Jello with whipped cream, that's great. But yeah, Jello's got a weird place in Utah sometimes.
Yeah, I heard. That's what I read. That the green Jello in particular had its run there. That it's not so popular anymore, but that everyone ate it. So apparently, you made dinner out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely an experience. All right, sorry.
Exactly, Misty. No way, right? One of our OVC members, she told us about a potato salad that had peas and carrots in it, and we were all like, no. But I think I'll take the potato salad over the Jello.
The green Jello dinner. Yep, I'm with you.
Okay. Well, as I said, Kennedy had gotten ahead of me, but we're going to go into environment and infrastructure. Now, traffic congestion, aging roads, population growth are major concerns in your district. How would you work to improve transportation infrastructure across Utah District 2?
The best solution there is an investment in things like light rail and other public transportation, which thankfully the state is already having those conversations and has done some investment in that area. I think federal support for that would definitely be helpful in increasing the amount of projects that we can do and the speed at which those projects are done. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Utah is a little odd. We have what's called the I-15 corridor, which runs north to south. And almost 80% of our population is just right along that corridor, which means that you can only expand the freeway to so many lanes. It's still going to get congested. The best way to reduce traffic congestion is to provide public access to transportation and get cars off the road. It's not about making roads bigger, it's about having fewer cars on the road. And so federal support for infrastructure projects that do that is the best way to help mitigate those traffic concerns.
Absolutely. And you'll be saying yes to those bills, right?
Yep.
An ongoing drought and rising water scarcity. What long-term solutions would you support to protect Utah's water supply and help communities become more resilient?
This is a super topical question right now because these are the things that we face. Utah is the second driest state in the nation. We live in a desert. Even up here in northern Utah, which is relatively wet in comparison, we're still pretty dry in comparison to most of the rest of the U.S. One of the very first things that we have to do is look at water allocation and how we're using that water. So traditionally, about 70 to 80% of Utah's water is used through agriculture. And a lot of that agriculture specifically is in alfalfa, hay, and other kinds of pasture land. We have to be more thoughtful about the kinds of crops that we're growing here, but we have to do so in a way that doesn't harm our local farmers. So I think it was last year, maybe it was the year before, that alfalfa production was worth about $160 million to the local economy, farmers growing it. Again, that's taking huge amounts of Utah's water supply. So if we're going to have farmers pivot from alfalfa to something else, then we need to identify local crops that they can grow that are less water intensive, that still allow farmers to have a living, right? Because agriculture is an important part of northern Utah. So that's one aspect of it, is how do we pivot agricultural water use to less water resource intensive crops that still allow farmers to have a place in the market and provide for their families. A second thing that we really need to focus on is Utah is uniquely at the forefront of generative AI development, and we have something called Silicon Slopes here, which is a mini Silicon Valley here that is really kind of a tech hub, which if you're not from the state or from the area or in the area, you might not be familiar with that. The current generative AI trend towards building huge data centers for processing. You
got ahead of me. Go ahead.
Right? Like it creates significant water concerns. Some of those data centers can use 5 million gallons of water a day to go ahead and provide cooling for the server racks. Utah wants to remain at the forefront of tech development. I think the state sees itself as a leader in the tech space right now. And we have a lot of good universities training some really smart people to do work in that area. So we have to have some hard conversations, right? What do we do about water allocation, and what are the trade-offs that we're willing to make in order to effectively drive economic development while still ensuring that we have a positive environmental outcome for our children and our children's children and their children. I think a hard question set is, what do data centers look like here in the state? Do we allow large data centers from private corporations, or do we focus on more localized data center development that supports only Utah business? That's a question set that I think that we need to have conversations about. So those are kind of the policies. Those are the areas that are really right now a focus of water and environmental concerns here in the state. Those are the two big ones.
I actually was going to say that Utah may be safe from this whole data center phenomenon that's happening because of the lack of water, or the shortage of water, and it needs that. But maybe not. Y'all just will have more of a shortage, unfortunately.
I hope not. That's what we need to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. Well, large portions of Utah Second District still lack reliable internet access. What would you do, or once you get to Congress, what bills will you support that will help expand broadband infrastructure so that students, workers, and small businesses aren't left behind? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but let's go a little deeper in that.
Yeah, so Melanie, like I said before, rural access to reliable high-speed internet is and then that is a critical factor if we look at educational opportunities, if we look at employment opportunities, and we've had structures in place to make sure that those resources were there, and then the current administration has cut those resources. I think, again, you go back to Congress, my very first priority in getting to Congress is addressing affordability concerns for my district. That means rolling back tariffs. It means making sure we have rural healthcare access. It means making sure we have access to things like high-speed internet in rural communities. It's resolving the affordability concerns. That's my very first thing that you have to do in Congress, because that's where my loyalty lies, is with my district.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that was my last question on environment and infrastructure. If anyone has any questions, you could come up and ask your question to Mr. Crosby, or put them in the chat. I will read them off to him. And if not, I will go right into my next and last subject, which is public safety. So I do know Josh I believe he is a Utah resident. And he says they will let us unalive of thirst before they give up Silicon Slopes. And he also thanks you for speaking about alfalfa, and which I'm so unfamiliar with. I don't have any idea about alfalfa, except there was a person on Little Rascals. That's it. That's all I know about alfalfa. So with no questions in the chat yet, I'm going to go ahead to public safety. District 2, or maybe Utah altogether, face increasing wildfire risk, especially in high desert and mountain areas. What is your plan to strengthen wildfire prevention, support local fire departments, and improve federal-state coordination during the fire season?
So, really good question. So from a congressional standpoint, a lot of this is about executive branch work, right? So this is the Forest Service, BLM, other federal agencies responsible for deploying resources in hotspot areas. Mm-hmm. As a congressional representative, my responsibility is to ensure there's appropriate funding for those agencies and to help with the broader macro issue, which are these environmental concerns. The reason that we have wildfires so much more prevalently these days is because the climate has heated up, right? Things are just hotter now than they have been, and we get directly or indirectly impacted by wildfires almost every year now. So when California sets on fire, we breathe the smoke, right? When Idaho sets on fire, Washington sets on fire, depending on which way the winds are blowing, we're breathing in all that smoke. Mm-hmm. And then we have our local issues here as well. As a congressional representative, my main focus is to ensure that the agencies handling those crises are properly funded, that they have proper oversight, and then to pass legislation that addresses the broader climate concerns so that we can create a better general environment so that we have fewer wildfires, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the things that we need to be thinking about at the congressional level.
Okay. So no sweeping the mountains.
No, yeah, I'm not sure that raking the forest is going to be particularly effective for us.
Okay. Well, some neighborhoods are concerned about rising youth crime, but many want solutions that help kids rather than punish them into a cycle. What kinds of community programs or prevention strategies would you support to keep the young people safe and engaged?
The first thing we do, and you're going to hear me say this again and again, is we solve the affordability problem. If you want to look at a direct cause for high crime rates, especially among youth, it's because they don't have access to resources. They're unemployed. They don't have a job. They don't have somewhere to spend their time. There are no open spaces for them to be anymore. Everywhere requires that they pay something. Those are systemic problems in making sure that youth aren't directly funneled into some sort of criminal activity. I mean, I was a bored teenager. We were all bored teenagers. The best way to make sure that we don't have an increase in youth crime is to make sure that the economy, generally speaking, is healthy, because then they have somewhere to go, somewhere to be, something to do. As far as direct programs, I think most of those are best addressed at the local community level. And so as a representative, my responsibility there is to make sure that there's funding and resources available for local decisions around how to best serve local communities. I'm not sure that a wide sweeping law that says, all youth have to be in by 6 p.m. if they're under the age of 18 is like, that's not an effective solution. What is an effective solution, though, is to go into Ogden, to go into North Ogden, to go into Layton, to go into Clearfield or to Syracuse and ask the local governments, what do you need? Like from a resourcing standpoint, what do you need? What does your solution look like? And how can we get you the resources necessary for your solution to be effective in your community? And we'll benchmark it. We'll go ahead and say, hey, these are the metrics that we need to assess to make sure this funding is not just a one-time thing, but if we're going to do ongoing work here. And then we make sure that those local communities have access to the resources and tools necessary to solve their problems. That, from my perspective, is the best way that a congressional legislator can help their district, is to be the advocate that says, my district needs resources. I'm going to go and find out what resources they need. I'm going to go find out how we can best use those resources. And then I'm going to spend my time back in DC making sure that my district gets those resources. That's my job, right? So you elect me, that's my job. That's what I'm doing as I'm working for you.
All right. Well, you've pretty much answered all my questions. Have just a few more, but they're going to be like closing questions. Which one of them is, if and when you get into Congress, do you plan on being on any committees?
Yeah, absolutely. So committee assignments are how Congress itself works, how it functions. Which committee I get assigned to is largely up to the broader party, right? So I'm running as a Democrat, so they would point me in the direction that they'd like me to serve on. From a district perspective, committees I think that would be particularly helpful are committees related to agricultural concerns, communities related to tech concerns, committees related to veterans and federal worker concerns. We have a huge military base here. We actually have, I think, the 5th largest federal workforce out of the DC, Maryland Beltway area. So any committee assignments where I can directly impact my district in a positive way, those would be my priority.
Sounds like a plan. Also, if elected, what is the single most meaningful change you hope families in Utah's 2nd District will feel by the end of your first term?
I hope that they would feel hopeful. And I know that sounds a little cliche, but I would hope that at the end of 2 years, families here in northern Utah don't worry about the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year, that they're able to focus on other kinds of concerns because they feel safe and secure and they have access to the things that they need. I would hope that at the end of my first 2 years, they feel hopeful, because I think right now that's one of the things that we're missing as a direct result of how our government is currently run. Everybody's stressed out. We're all worried about what's coming next. Nobody's exactly sure or confident that tomorrow is going to be better than today was. And I would hope that at the end of my first 2 years, that's different.
Absolutely. So my last official question to you is, what sets you apart from your candidates? First, primaries, who you're running against in primaries, and secondly, the opposite side that you may face in the general.
Yeah. I don't know my primary challengers particularly well. Neither of them have been super communicative, which I think is unfortunate because hopefully we're all running for the same reason, right? To help the people in our community. I would say based off of what I do know, I got a couple more years on me, right? So I am 40. The other challengers are a little bit younger than that for sure. I would say that I have a lot more life experience just in general. So I've worked in the public sector, the private sector. I come from a military family background. I was headed to the military before I blew my knee out. I have a lot of just broad experience that I think helps me be effective in doing the work of a legislator. right? Which is working across the aisle, working with people, finding practical solutions to problems, being focused on the needs of the district. If you've started to follow me at all on social media, you might know that I don't have a huge social media presence. A lot of my content really is just kind of straightforward. I'm answering questions, I'm giving updates. Part of that is because I work full time, right? I just don't have time to spend all day on social media. The other part of that is because I think my primary responsibility is to effectively communicate what I'm doing, but then to work. Like, you want me working, not shit posting on the internet. I'm sorry if my mom's watching. I apologize for the language. As far as my opponent, Blake Moore, I think there's a couple of core things that separate us. The very first thing is I believe public service is about public service. So that means that I don't accept corporate PAC money.
Okay.
I've already mentioned that he definitely does. It means that I believe my responsibility is first to the country, so the Constitution, and then second to my district. That's really the top two concerns. Everything else is secondary or tertiary to that. My responsibility is to the people and communities that live here. And my opponent has not been fulfilling that obligation. His responsibility, based off of the way he votes and the things that he cares about, are to Republican leadership back in DC and to corporations, excuse me, and not to the families and communities here. And I think the third thing is, at the end of the day, Blake Moore has lost the trust of this district. I still need to earn it, because many people in the district don't know me yet. So I need to earn your trust to be able to say, this is the person that we want to represent us. But I know that Blake Moore has lost it because we have seen how he has acted, and we know it's not in our interests. And so I would say that both of us have a challenge right now with trust. Mine is that I need to earn yours. His is that he's lost it, and I don't see a good way for him to get it back.
Those are some good reasons. Those are definitely some good reasons. Well, can you remind the people of Utah that may be listening when the primaries are, and the big election, what date that is?
Yeah, so Utah's weird because everything in the state is weird. So if you're in Utah, you should come out to the Democratic caucus on March 17th. That's the night that Democrats will select caucus members and delegates to go to convention, which happens in April. And at convention, that's who we decide who's going to run for office. So come out March 17th. That's when you get to go ahead and have an active voice in the political process. And then the decision is made at convention by people that came out and participated on March 17th. And then the general election this year is the same for everybody, right? It's Tuesday in November. So we do have mail-in ballots. We typically get those about a month beforehand. So pay attention, get your ballot in on time, and make sure that you participate. Because regardless of who you vote for, this is our democracy, right? It's our government. It's of the people, by the people, and for the people. And we need to participate in it if we want to keep it. So do that. Go and participate.
You know, I typically fall on the side of states' rights. I don't think nobody should have no state rights. That's how I usually fall. But
well, you live in DC. You don't have any rights. Why should anybody else?
Why should anybody else, right? But voting is one of those things that I actually enjoy. Each state having their own thing. Like you caucus and then you have a convention to determine.
Yep. That's how Utah rolls.
Wow. Well, that's good. Well, remind everyone how they can reach you, how they can support you, donate to you, volunteer for you. Give us all your socials.
All right, you got it. So the easiest thing to do is go to my website. It's petercrosbyforcongress.org. And on there, we've got everything. It's links to all of my socials. It is links to my donation. And I know this is my least favorite part of this. Publicly funded elections really would be the best. I am not accepting corporate PAC money, which means that I am dependent on small dollar donors. And I know that it is Christmas season and the holiday season. If you would donate $10, that would make a huge difference to my campaign. Genuinely speaking, it would. I would much rather have 10,000 small dollar donors than a couple hundred people that have donated the max amount. Because that tells me that I'm doing something right, that I'm representing the people that are going to be impacted by my laws. So if you have a few minutes, please go to my donation link, sign up. If you'd like more information, we'll keep you posted. I do a Friday night TikTok update every Friday night. And then on Tuesdays, starting in the new year, we also do live TikTok events with people throughout the community. So I'm happy to have you join us and ask questions.
Excellent. I will wait, let me make sure I followed you. Boom. So that I can attend those. This has been an absolute pleasure. I'm not gonna lie. I was not expecting a whole lot from Utah, but you surprised me. Look, I don't know much about it.
Oh, that is some serious shade, Melanie. Like, that is some shade.
I'm a DC girl. We like what is going on in Utah. But if there are more great people like you, Peter, in Utah, I'm like all for it. Let's go. Let's on a road trip. Let's go. So I thoroughly appreciate and enjoyed this conversation. But what I would like to do right now is invite you and everyone else listening to our next town hall, which is tomorrow. And it will be, I guess, we have a double header, and one is for Chuck Summers, and he is running. Hold on, I got my papers. Hold on, y'all. Chuck Summers is running in Missouri's 2nd district for U.S. Congress. So this will be one of your colleagues, Peter, running in Missouri. That is at 7 p.m. To 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. And then we'll be talking to James Zeb Taylor, and he's running in Virginia's 3rd district. So this could be your class right here. Okay, so come check these guys out. Again, we have one at 7 p.m. and then another one at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Pete, we also have a round table we do with different candidates that we have had these town halls with. I think you would be perfect addition to it. We do it on Sundays, every other Sunday at 3 p.m. So the next one is coming up December 21st at 3 o'clock. So if you can take time out of your holidays and stop through and come have a little conversation with us and other candidates, like I said, this could be your class. And y'all can already start brainstorming at how y'all going to go into Congress and bust that door down, right?
I would love to, Melanie. I think the chat was saying that one's been canceled because I've seen no with so many O's that I can hear the scream through my phone. But if it is there, I would love to join a roundtable conversation. I love to talk to smart people and hear their perspectives.
Okay. I'm a little confused, but as far as I knew, that was still on, and perhaps maybe they meant because as far as I knew, it was only one happening tomorrow, but I may have been wrong on that too. But either way, y'all you follow 1 and you follow 2. So look for us to be on and come back and see us, right?
I will join you the round table on Sunday. That sounds great.
Perfect. I just want to thank everyone for coming. The audience, Mr. Crosby, my host, OVC. I appreciate you all. Me, everyone else, we are OVC. We are a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity, like that guy there, and ensure every voice is heard. Through education, outreach, accountability, and action, we're building a stronger democracy, one informed vote at a time. So make sure you continue to join us because your vote is your power. Thank you all.